There we go. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this cold, chilly January evening. Hopefully, wherever you are beaming in from is warm and cozy. We're just glad you're here, and I'm grateful that we've got some great learning here ahead of us. Before we get underway, I just want to acknowledge that I am beaming in from Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. And you are all coming from treaty territory somewhere in Manitoba. And I just encourage you to be aware of what treaty land you are on and who the original inhabitants of that land were, and the relationship that you have with them, and what you might be able to learn from those folks as we move forward together and be good neighbors and good stewards of this great land that we call home. So this workshop is being presented as part of the Manitoba Band Association Mentorship program. This is a program that's primarily intended for early service teachers, but we've got a melange of folks joining us tonight, which is great. And I'm just grateful that that we have this program and the ability to provide sessions like these for folks. This did not exist when I was an early service teacher, and I sure would have appreciated hopefully the community that comes from this, but also the learning and the support. And if you're in your first handful of years of teaching band and you're not a part of the mentorship program, it is something you can join. We'll pair you with an experienced mentor who will kind of be your point of contact. They can be a shoulder to cry on, or just another human at the other end of the text message, or someone that can come and visit you at your school, and pretty much anything in between. So that's something to keep in mind if you're in those first few years of teaching band and not connected with the program. Or I know we've got some students joining us this evening. So as you look ahead to when you join the workforce, I strongly encourage you to connect with this program. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. And the way we're able to do that is George Douglas, the late George Douglas, established an endowment fund that provides funding for this program annually, and makes all this possible. So we're really grateful for that resource as well, and the ability to do these kinds of things. There are a couple things coming up that I'll just quickly highlight. Next Friday, for those of you in the Winnipeg region, it's a Metro Common Day, which means you don't have instruction on that day. And strategically, we have planned a great PD session with whom one of the presenters is with us this evening. Rob, give us a wave. You may or may not be able to see the thumbnail, but we've got a great day of learning called Jazz 101 taking place at École Regent Park in Transcona, which actually happens to be one of the schools that I taught at in my first year. We're grateful that Rob is going to spend half the day sharing about improv with beginner jazz students, and Alan Subban will be joining us for the other half of the day, focused on your beginner jazz rhythm section. So I think that's going to be really great. It's just $50 for MBA members. There's a lower student price as well. And you can still register for that and join us next Friday if you can. And then looking a little further ahead to the spring, in April, I believe April 9th, we're doing one last virtual session for this year with Aaron Dodds, who will be leading us through a session focused on planning. So thinking a little further ahead. Hopefully you've survived to that point of the year, and now it's time to look ahead to next year a little bit, maybe. Thinking about trip planning and just planning your year, planning your calendar, and setting yourself up for success. So that's going to be a great session as well. That's a virtual one. You can register on the MBA website for that. All right, I am done talking. I'm really grateful that we are joined tonight by one of the mentors from the mentorship program. Derek Fraser will be presenting in just a moment. And I didn't tell him I was going to do this, but he may have suspected I was going to slightly embarrass one or both of us by introducing him as somebody I met quite some time ago now in my very first practicum, where he was a grade 9 band student at Minnetonka School in the St. Vital area. And I was a very green I don't know, what was I, third, fourth year university student at that point.
Spring one.
Yeah. And anyways, we've gotten to know each other over the years. Heck, we even worked at Long McQuaid together for a little while as well. And I'm really glad that Derek is able to join us this evening and to share a bit about his adventure and his story and his approach to recruiting and retention. So with that, I'm going to make Derek big so you don't have to stare at me anymore.
It's probably better if they
Oh,
do. Yeah,
and hey,
like
Derek.
you're probably the person I see with most regularity the longest now. I see you more throughout the year than those friends from school at that point in time. So, uh, my oldest friend now. So anyway, you'll have to forgive me. I will be clearing my throat and drinking hot water with honey throughout this. I've been fighting a sore throat, and hot leaf juice just doesn't do it for me. So we do. What is happening here already? There we go. Can everyone see this? Excellent. So, this already didn't super sit well with me. I'm not a big PowerPoint guy. I did it. It felt like it was maybe partially a requirement. At least it's just to keep me on track. As I can have an idea and spiral off on a completely different track, as anyone who's a student taught with me will know. But a lot of what I'm going through tonight is what I talk with my student teachers and just sort of things that I've learned um, within, like just from my time at Oak Park and learning my community. So the first thing is every time I sat down to think about tonight, the words were kind of wrong. Um, Recruitment and retention is maybe the end result, but really what the focus is community and relational teaching, and those are two big ones. And so just starting with a little about me, I have been teaching now. This is my 14th year. I taught for about 3 months after I graduated right away at Cole Charleswood School, where I had about 6 weeks till the concert, and I think it was 8 till report card. So I got kind of thrown into that. I was fortunate to share that role with Elaine Guillemette, who had 1 year teaching experience, or maybe two. So we were both a little green. I then went to work 0.75 term at General Bing, which was 7 to 9 band and jazz band every other day for a half hour at lunch. And then I did 3 years at Fort Richmond teaching jazz band and beginner students. And then at Oak Park, when I started, there was 82 kids in band. And we're just over 160-ish now, like somewhere, give or take, depends on the year. I was teaching a section of choir when I started. I'm no longer doing that. We have a wind ensemble and 4 jazz bands and all that fun stuff. But so we're going to start with community, which is, I think, pretty well the biggest part. There's going to be overlap. I'm sure I'll get to a slide under relational teaching and be like, that's community, man, or vice versa. But this was the way my brain sort of put all the thoughts together. Um, so, I mean, the first thing you got to determine is what are the goals for your program? And this is something I've had discussions with other people in my department. I'm our school's department head. And, what do you want your program to look like in 5 years? This is now, I'm rounding off, I guess, halfway through my 10th year at Oak Park. I've done 9 full years, 9.5. Uh, and in terms of 5 year plans, I think I've done at least three, maybe four of them. Like I never make it 5 years. But it's important to put pen to paper. What do you want the program to be for your community? What are the community needs? What are the students' needs? And how it just helps you sort of line up how to get there. If you have an idea in your head and it changes, it doesn't, there's something about putting it to paper or whatever, Word document, but something that sort of just lines it up for you. And then, like I said, it's never lasted 5 years for me because nothing goes according to plan, but at least it gives you some focus. And then what is your philosophy? And that needs to be a part of that plan. That needs to be a part of some of the goals, right? So for me, and I take no credit for this. I have stolen this from one of my mentors, Jenny Taylor, who's a trumpet player and was my trumpet teacher in high school. And I'm very fortunate I get to work with her once a week. But it's called playing an instrument. And I remember when she and I were playing an East Side Jazz Band together that she had mentioned that one of the we used to carpool because it's out in Transcona, which is the other side of the planet from where we live. And she said, it's playing an instrument. Play is the operative word of that. Like play is supposed to be fun. And I just went, holy cow. That's it. That's what I want to do. Like that's the whole thing. And so that is my philosophy. If the kids aren't having fun playing an instrument, and yes, there's band tests and report cards and concerts and festivals and trips and all that stuff. But at the end of it all, if they're not having fun, what's the point? And again, that might be different depending on your community and your community needs, but I do feel that um, when you are like, especially with high school, there's so many different options courses, and they once they get to like grade 10, end of grade 10, they start thinking about all the sciences and what they're going to do, and often it's financially focused, so they're looking at sciences and maths because of engineering, like all the STEM stuff, right? But how do you fit into all that stuff? And for me, it's this is something fun. It's rewarding. It's and can be intense at times. It's can be challenging, but it's fun, and it's something fun that they get to do as a part of their day, which I think is a large reason why a lot of us went into education. We had fun playing an instrument. So I'm not a huge data guy. My assistant superintendent and former principal Troy Scott, he loves data, and I've so that's elements of that have rubbed off on me a bit. So you track your numbers, and it helps me understand what to expect, maybe some things to focus on or areas to work on. So I know that within my program, I can expect my biggest drop between grade 9 and 10. It's usually that time. My grade 12s this year are kind of a weird year because of COVID. I've called them my little band Big Heart their whole time because they had about 23 kids that showed up for grade 9, which was about half of what I usually get. And I'm at 20 right now. We had some kids move away, we had some kids move in, but we've always sort of maintained that sort of number. So I don't really count them, but every other year I've looked at it, I usually lose between 10 to 15% from grade 9 to 10. And from the time the grade 9s reach grade 12, I'll have lost anywhere from 12 to 20%. What kind of got me on the track for this, if you excuse me for 1 second, was there was the year our school added, we used to have just French grade 9s and we added English grade 9s. So I had more kids. I had about 50 kids in band, or 49, I guess, actually. And at the end of that year, when they got to grade 10, I had 33, which was a 33% loss. That's significant, and that's a problem in my mind. If there's that many kids in band, why did I lose a third? And so I started thinking about it, and okay, and looking at my class list, and only three of those 30 kids were in band only. Every other kid in that class had me for band and jazz band, or band and wind ensemble, or band and jazz band and wind ensemble. They saw me more than once a day, or every day. And I realized that even just by the nature of being in front of them more, I had better connections with them. So how do I make connections with the kids I don't see as much? Uh, and so part of it is having the band be accessible. Uh, the kids can't practice for fun or goof around on instruments or each other's instruments, if you're not opposed to that, if the door's locked. If you lock the door and go to the staff room for lunch, then you're telling the kids that it's not a place for them to be. And obviously, I understand we all need our time with adults, or sometimes we need to take a break. And it depends on your school. I leave my doors open and I just walk out. About once a week, I'll leave and the band room's just open and the kids don't burn it down, thankfully. You might have to structure this differently. I recognize that every school is different, but it's hard to bring friends that don't take band to the band room if that door's locked, if they're not welcome. So our students, I sort of have I call it like the chaperone policy. So if there's a not band kid in there, there has to be at least one person who says like, yeah, that's my person. I'm their chaperone. They don't have to tell me or like log in or anything like that, but they just have to essentially understand that like they're responsible to make sure that they don't touch the percussion stuff or, kind of screw around. Um, and the kids tend to take it seriously. The other thing too is if your band room's open at lunch, like I have kids that live in apartments and they can't practice at home. I had one boy who big in the football, like played on our team, was huge in the football, and loved playing the trumpet. But when he went home, he got made fun of by his older brother who was only into football, and he got made fun of a lot by his brother when he would practice trumpet. So he wouldn't practice. He would practice at lunch. But if I, lock in the door, you get the idea. Uh, Giving the students as much autonomy as possible. And is this one makes people uncomfortable when I've talked to them about it. Or some people anyway, not everyone. But and it's taken me a while to sort of figure out how to explain it exactly, but it's a great way to foster critical thinking, right? Like when the kids have a say in what they are doing, they're more invested in it. And by critical thinking, I mean, questioning and challenging the approach to the music making process and the experience. So at Oak Park, our students, every set they play. So everything we're gonna, like that's on the program at Optimist, the students chose. Everything at our fall concert, the students chose. Everything at our spring concert, the students choose. On our trips, the students choose. Band, jazz, wind ensemble, our small ensemble course, the students choose the music. We do a March Madness brackets, right? So they get one. So every time, we talk about what makes a good concert, what makes a good set, if another class is already picked, they'll say this is what the nines are ending with, and this is, the tens are beginning. We talk about our set as a whole. And so the kids get to have an input on what they're playing. The tricky part is making sure that they don't have options that you don't want them to have. So essentially, most things that I hand out to the kids, and we do quite a bit of sight reading, I'm committed to performing it if I need to, or if I have to. Last year, and I usually have a pretty good idea where it goes, and I try to massage this the best I can. So I will pair first suite and second suite, like whole two suites against each other, so the kids can vote on that because I don't want two suites making it to the second round. They can choose between one. Or I will, at the beginning, I just flat out say, like, if you don't have an opinion or you would rather me choose for you, these are the ones, this one and this one would be my choice, or this one and this one and this one. And I say, and I tell the kids, I joke about it, I say, I'm definitely applying pressure here that these are the ones that I would like you to do. But, last year for Optimist, I'm sorry, not Optimist, family festivals, I'll get there one day. Last year, my 11th and 12th chose Preludes to Sciano Rondo, and that's what they wanted to do. Wasn't my number one, but I was willing to do it because I gave it to them, and we went with it. We started a wind ensemble retreat this fall, and so last June, I just talked to the kids, do you want to do an overnight? Do you want to just do a Saturday? And when I put it all together, after we were done, I asked them, I said, how did you feel about it? And we're going to talk about it again in May as we plan for next year's. I think it's also disingenuous to assume that every year the kids will always want the same thing. They are different people with different personalities, different likes and dislikes. So this year's wind ensemble, or last year's wind ensemble, I should say, wanted to do a 1 day Saturday thing. This year I'm getting the vibe that they want to do like an overnight, one night at campus in a or something. Next year might be different. And I think respecting that is important. It makes them feel like they have a voice, and it makes it more enjoyable for them because it's more what they want. Side note to the picking the rep thing. Uh, 2 years ago, I had a kid who was just whining about the pieces that they were playing, just nonstop. And I was like, I didn't choose these. Your peers chose these. That's why you're stuck with them. And I went, yeah. It kind of gives you an out as an educator too. Yeah. Oh, that was the other thing too. when we have 4 jazz bands now. And so we did one year where we were doing auditions forever, and it got to a point where we were almost cutting a whole jazz band. And so we did a two jazz band, two of the same grade rather, and just tried to balance it as best as we could. And then partway through the year, like my teaching partner and I kept going back and forth, like, is this working? Should we do like a call it a more committed band and a less committed band? How do we create a space for everyone to make jazz, but honor, you know, what the kids' commitment levels are? And so we decided to just ask them, give them a little survey and ask them some questions. And, the one thing I wanted to make sure my teaching partner, like we were on the same page, is that whatever the students, you can't solicit feedback from people and then ignore it. So if the students overwhelmingly said, like, the reason they take jazz is not because they want to always play the hardest, most demanding stuff. It's because they want to play challenging stuff with their friends, and that they didn't want to have a group of their friends feeling like there's an A band and a B band, and they mostly just want to be with their friends. And so we actually removed the audition process entirely and just said, write the kind of parts you want to play. If you're not going to play the saxophone you want, what's your runner up? And list, 3 to 5 people that you would like to be in a band with. And if there's anyone you absolutely can't be with, put that down too. And it's been a lot better this year and that's what they wanted. I don't think the quality of our music making has dropped because we've mixed, different types of personalities. I think the students are a lot happier being with the people they want to be with, and they're just more excited to be there. Oh yeah. So all this is working towards creating a sense of belonging. The more we can insert opportunities and build structures for shared decision making, the more invested the students will be. And by creating shared values that we are all in this together, the more students will want to be with that in group of people who are in it together. I should have taken that line out, but I'm just going to read the slide. My most recent band test is a good example of working together. Our grade 9s are playing a piece called Mil Estrellas. It's a Spanish march. And so they've been having some trouble with some of the things. And I did something I've never done before, and I wrote out 7 of the melodies in MuseScore and printed it off for them. And usually their band tests, I try to find etudes or exercises to elevate their musicality or their music making, I guess. But because of the Pembina Trail cyber attack we had, if you haven't heard of that, and actually Oak Park, we had a bomb threat the week before Christmas break. There was so many things that just threw us off kilter that I was a little delayed on the testing. So I just told them these 7 melodies, this is what you're going to do for your test by the end of January. And I said to the students, what do you feel is a fair number for me to ask you? 2 of them were harmonies to melodies, so they were kind of the same. So there was really only 5 different things. And so I just said, what do you think's a fair number? And I was surprised by the kids. One kid said 2, and then most of them said 3. And I had looked at them and I was like, well, I wanted to say 5. And they were like, what? And so we kind of went back and forth. I said, okay, how about this? Do you feel it's a fair compromise to do 4? I'm not getting to hear all 5 that I wanted to hear. You have to do one more than 3. And they said yes. I said, and I made sure I said, you don't have to say yes because I'm the teacher and you think you just got to say what I want you to say. Do you feel it's fair? Yeah. I said, a good compromise is if no one's happy or everyone's happy, but it's got to be one or the other. So we all felt good about that. And I said, okay, since you're only doing 4 and I'm missing out on one of them, is it fair that I choose 2 and you choose 2? Fair. So I chose 2 that I want them to do. They're going to choose 2 of their own. So in this, uh, they all of a sudden they're fine. There was no complaints about the test because they felt like they had a voice in it. they had to say. They felt like it was fair that we worked together to get to this point. And they understood why we got to number four, why they had two. I didn't just say it. And one of the things I do tell my students is that if what I'm doing isn't fun or reasonable, they have permission to sit down with me and tell me why. I think it's really important that as a teacher, I want to know if I'm, you know, beating a dead horse, like tell me. If I'm doing something that upsets people, tell me. If I'm doing something that's just boring, tell me. So you won't hurt my feelings, probably, but I'm a grown up and you'll be fine. And this one does kind of fall into the center of the community, pardon me, relational teaching Venn diagram. So relational teaching, uh, it's something that I thought was a buddy of mine invented, but it turns out it's a real thing. Um, so it starts with at Oak Park. It starts with names and donuts, and I don't know how to spell it, so I put both of them there for you, if you have a preference. And so someone's name is the sweetest sound I can hear, and I might have the words wrong, but that's essentially what Dale Carnegie said in How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book, I listened to the audiobook. I've listened to it twice, I think once when I was student teaching and once a few years ago. It holds up. It's more business focused, but I do find that a lot of business books are quite good too. I try to read at least one leadership type of book a year just to get some new ideas and refresh some old ones. When you listen to the audiobook, if you listen to it instead of reading it, it sounds like it's 100 years old. And it is not new. Even if you buy the book, it looks like it was designed in the early 80s. But there's a lot of good stuff in there. And you can also find some summaries and stuff like that that if you can't stand how old it is, that you can find and kind of go through. And so yeah, so the someone's name, the sweetest sound I can hear, but it's even sweeter when I get it wrong. So one thing I do with our students in grade 9, and I think I stole this from Daryl Ferguson, but I might be wrong on that one. I'll give him credit. It's Daryl Ferguson. Uh, is so I tell all the grade 9s, I will have the pronunciation, like your name correct, and the pronunciation by our first rehearsal in October. Otherwise, I will buy you all donuts. I will not make one mistake, or I will buy you all donuts. This year was particularly frustrating because I took so on our school software Edsby, you can like take all the pictures of kids, and I didn't move a kid for the entire month. I didn't change any parts. They got what they got. They sat where they sat. Nothing changed. And I put all their little pictures in rows, and I went home and I studied the snot out of this thing. And I was so confident. At the end of September, and I should just say I'll do it once before October, but I always say the first rehearsal of October. And so what happened was the end of September, I got it right, knocked it out of the park. And the kids also helped me because they constantly quiz me through September. Oh, what's my name? What's my name? It's been a really good thing for helping me. But I was too confident. And so for the third year in a row, unfortunately, there was no conciliatory Timbits. I had to go buy a bunch of donuts because it was like the third kid too, like boop, boop, boop. And they all started laughing at me. But in that moment, it binds them all together. All these kids from all these different feeders. I have 4 official feeder schools, but I get kids from at least 2 or 3 others every year, like a handful. And all these kids come from these different places. They don't know each other super well. The month of September's a lot for grade 9 students. And on that first rehearsal in October, it just solidifies them all because they beat me. And it's like $60 in donuts. Like it's not a big cost to have that kind of win. So I mean, the relationships, it's the biggest part of this is what do you know about your students? Do you know what team they play on? Like I got a lot of hockey kids. Do you know they dance or they do gymnastics or how many siblings they have? Uh, and so that year that I had lost that big loss, the third, however long ago that was, one of the things I started doing is I started standing at the door. And again, I'd love to say that I, sitting down and thinking, how do I make it bigger? impact. I stole it from Jeff Kula at River East Collegiate when I student taught with him there, and he always stood at the door as those kids were coming and going. And so I started doing that, and it is hard not to care about them and their day-to-day things that occupy their minds when you're standing at the door greeting them, asking them how their weekend was or their holiday or whatever, right? They even the quiet kids will start to give you little tidbits that you can kind of ask about later. And that's what it really comes down to. Like the kids want to feel like they're not just the 13th clarinet who kind of sits in the middle of the back and gets ignored. They want to feel like they're a part of the team. And that's what we are. We are a team. Sports are probably the closest thing that comes to what we do. Not exactly the same, but and it offers a space for those kids who maybe struggle in that too. So when they're coming through the door and you're asking, hey, how was that? Oh, you had that hockey tournament, right? Like, how'd that go? Oh, you lost. Oh, were you playing against so and so? Like, even just knowing that they play right wing, sometimes that's all that matters, that you care. And I'm kind of bouncing around here, but during the rehearsals, I try to hammer home that I'm not the expert. I'm just the oldest. I have the most experience, potentially, but they all have something to bring up. And if you've noticed a trend here, trying to credit things I've stolen, the one I've stolen from Bill that I regularly use is if we are reliant on my aging, decrepit brain instead of your, 50, 60 young, malleable ones, then we're probably in big trouble. And so I try to get the kids to be as involved and have as much autonomy in the rehearsal process as possible too. I recognize that this is something that I've worked on over time. This is, my first year at Oak Park. It was not like that. There was a lot of, you know, hurdles to jump and things to figure out and navigate. And I tried so many things from other schools. I tried things that, I know worked for Cheryl at Fort Richmond, but they wouldn't work in my community. I tried things that I know worked for Jackie at Massey, and they wouldn't work in my community. You have to try things and kind of figure out your community before you can get a lot of this stuff off the ground. Um, how you handle behavior, right? Like, I think it's a natural human response to get frustrated at things, and um, like I'm not a yeller. It's really never been my thing. I never liked the feeling of it. Never like when my parents would do it, or teachers, whatever. Like it's just not. I was not the easiest child in school. Um, and so I'll wait, right? And I tell the kids that. But even other things like, and the funniest one is last week I was having all the kids like, "Okay, write this in. We're gonna do a chill around over there. Write this in." And so underneath my stand is a little tray table, and this I wasn't really paying attention. And all of a sudden, one of my flutes is putting something back. I'm like, "There's no pencil there. It's just a pen." And I look, and sure enough, yeah, it's just a pen. And I look at the kid, and I'm like, "Did you write in pen?" And she goes, like, just deer in the headlights, beat red. Like, that's an original. I said, folks, and the whole room went quiet at this point. See what was going to happen. I said, folks, I understand that a lot of middle schools photocopy stuff. You don't get originals, and justifiably so. I don't have the time or the patience for that. I hand out originals. Please do not write on them in pen. Do not write on them in highlighter. There's old charts from before I was here that have highlighter on them. And I made a big show of it. And then I looked at her and I went, now you are going to take her pencil and you're going to sign your name, because every time this brand new piece that we just got is played in the future, we're going to have a memory from this one, and you're going to leave your mark on this one. And I was telling my student teacher, like, if I just, belittled her or made her feel bad or like yelled or whatever, the only thing that's going to happen after that is every time you can't put the ink back in the pen. Getting mad at her or yelling at her or whatever is not going to put the ink back in the pen and undo the thing. It's there. So sign your name, and now you've got a bit of your own legacy. But at least now, every time she comes across that, it's at least a somewhat positive experience. where everyone learned about not writing in pen versus, if I, create some animosity, or every time she comes past that passage, she's going to be upset about, being yelled at or whatever. It's going to be a reminder every time because the pen's not going away. And so it's hard to be engaging day after day when you don't have a relationship or a meaningful relationship with your students. And as the tech and societal demands enter the school system, music allows for us to keep it a human experience. And that's, to me, that's what that is, right? It's seeing the human that made a mistake, felt bad, and we move from it. So leave it the head and the heart will follow. Leave it the heart and the head will follow, pardon me. So this has always sort of been how I've kind of felt about it. I never was able to really put words to it, but um, I try to lead with my heart every time. When a kid's not doing what they're doing, why are they not doing what they're doing? When they have to miss a class because of something, if it's to come to chat with you, always leave with the head. Try not to get frustrated first. Um, and I think I kind of stole that one, like the words, not the actions, but my kids watch a show called Bluey, and the dad at one point says head first. I keep saying it backwards now. Heart first, head later. And I just really think that that's the best way. The kids are coming to school, they're spending all day doing all sorts of different things. There's all sorts of you don't you, some kids have happy lives at home, some don't. And if you can greet them at the door with an open heart, you make a space that's welcoming to them, And if the kid is the 700th trumpet and only can play first valve or whatever, um, they can't improve if you don't keep them welcome or keep them feeling welcome, right? And I do think that like when there's more to life than band, and I know that some of my peers and there's some people who like band is a lot of their life, but there is more to life than band for these kids. But band adds more to their lives when it's done well. They have sciences and maths and goals and aspirations and maybe hungry tummies when they come to school. But uh, band adds more to life. And when band is challenging, it's rewarding. But when it's challenging and it's too intense, it loses that. Well, I wrote sparkle here. It's you have to give the kids some breathing room. And so I had one kid. She's in grade 12 now. When she was in grade 9, I had her after a particularly difficult class, math, and she came crying every other day. And I just remember thinking, like, if I had as many students or parents crying about band as much as this class, I would reevaluate everything I do. I can't wrap my head around going to a class and having kids be upset like that. Uh, and so, be genuinely interested in your students, try and help them out when you can. Um, but you have to be genuine. Like there have been times where I've seen, people or student teachers try to be really positive or give something nice to say, but you can tell that it is coming from the brain and not the heart. They think like, oh, I should say something nice to this person. Or even worse is I was unkind to this person in class or I tore a strip off them. I should say something nice now. And that doesn't work. If it's not coming from the heart, if it's only because you're thinking through like, oh, I was mean, I should say something nice now, or it's got to come from the heart. And showing respect to your students when their opinions differ and they make mistakes, it's important. And admitting when you're wrong, because you will be sometimes, or make a mistake because you will. It humanizes you. Pretending otherwise just puts another barrier. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be a difference between the teacher who knows the things and the students who are coming to learn. But uh, we all make mistakes. If you can look at you, sorry, folks, I'm dumb, or I missed that, or can we do that again for me? Just because I heard the clarinets do this thing and I was not paying attention. I missed that cue, or like just to say like it's my fault. But everyone makes mistakes. And so the last thing that our students will do at Oak Park that I started doing, again, parts of this I've stolen, uh, is the grade 12s have to do a project for me. And it doesn't have to be grade 12s. If you teach in middle school, it could be grade 8s or 9s or whatever your grade is. But they do a project instead of one final playing test because for most grade 12s, I will usually have a handful of kids auditioning for music somewhere, pardon me, but I don't have a whole class. And that's something I actually should mention. I really try to make the point in grade 9 that you're not, you shouldn't be coming to band because you think I want you all to be professional musicians or teachers or, we need people to sew up hearts and fix things. And, like we need people to contribute to society. But the important thing is that when you graduate school and you go and do whatever, that you are a plumber who plays the trumpet or whatever, right? That you can play music, you appreciate music, and you value it. And so our grade 12s thing, I got to the point like, why am I making them play me another etude? Like most of these kids aren't gonna touch their instrument for a couple years. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but it's kind of pointless. And so I stole from Chloe Plomadon, who was at Maples at the time, this report card thing. And so the students have three parts, and the first thing they have to do is in some medium, they have to create a presentation as to why students arriving for grade 9 should take band until the end of high school. So it can be PowerPoint, a video. I had some kids do a rap last year, which was pretty funny. Posters, whatever, right? Something that just sort of says this is why it's valuable, why it's important, and they present that to the class. And then I tell them this is the one I stole from Chloe is I've given them 16 report cards, more or less, with 4 terms, 4 years, um, with a total of 48 to 64 comments. Not every comment lights out, but you know, they've gotten a lot of comments from me. And so they have to give me a markless report card with the 3 comments guidelines that we get for report cards. So a strength, a challenge, and a next step. And it's important to recognize, and I tell the students this, I recognize that there is a bias here, me asking you this, because you are the people who stayed the whole time. I can't, if I could, I would, but I can't get this from the people who dropped. And so I there is a bias, but I have gained some wonderful insights from it. And I don't mean wonderful like Mr. Fraser's the best. I mean like, hey, maybe try this next time. Hey, like I came into class late that time and in front of everyone, he asked me where I was, and I didn't really want to tell everyone that I was at the counselor. Like, you learn things. I tell them, I'm a grown up. I think I've already said this. They can't hurt my one feeling. Um, and honest, constructive, polite feedback is a way for me to grow, and it no way has any impact on their time here or their grades or anything like that. And then the third part is sort of a if it's no, then they don't have to do much. But if they ever considered not taking band in high school after grade 9, so after they arrived in the building and we'd worked together and I'm meeting them at the door and getting to know them and all these things are cooking. If they considered not taking band, why and what made them stay? And that's important, I think. And sometimes we don't want to hear the answers to these things because um, it hurts, right? Like when a kid drops class, it can be the kid that barely knows how to put the trombone together, and he doesn't. I get my lists and I don't have them on it. I'm like, wow, it's like a knife to the gut for me. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it does. So that to me bothers me more than hearing like, hey, like hey, you could do this better. I tell the kids if you're gonna say you suck, great, but tell me why, Mr. Fraser, you suck because, and give me the feedback after. So yeah, and in preparing for this presentation, I did learn something. I got a buddy of mine, he's a phys ed teacher, and we often shoot the breeze about because he's in like a similar environment, right? There's a lot of parallels between band and athletics, and he's always said like you're a relational teacher, relational teacher. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I try to have good, meaningful connections with my students. And so I just kind of thought he had made it up, but it turns out it's a thing. And so I found this quote and I just really liked it and threw it in at the end. I don't have that book. I have not read this book. I've done no reading in relational teaching. I'm going to now. Probably will be one of my books this year, but not this one, but something else. But a relational teacher or relational teaching encourages educators to create an atmosphere of love in the learning environment where each child feels capable, connected, and cared for. And I think, I hope anyway, most of, if not all of what I've talked about tonight kind of goes towards that. I have a few thank yous. First of all, the MBA. They have been an integral part and always around for my teaching career, despite renaming the Optimist Festival what feels like 14 times. They're a wonderful support in our community. Brent does an excellent job leading them and taking the helm. And I'm proud and happy to be on this mentorship committee and the festival committee. The staff and students at my school, there's been a lot of learning that I've done at Oak Park and how to grow a program and musically grow a program as well. My own mentors, and which I've been had the good fortune of working with some really great people. Some of the people I've mentioned stealing things from, I student taught with Daryl and Cheryl Ferguson and Jeff Kula. I got to work with Cheryl Ferguson, and when I had my first job, one of the first people to reach out to me was Bill Christensen, who, despite never having been his student at any point in time, is always willing to take a phone call and rattle around some ideas with me. And I think I would be remiss if I did not mention that once a week sitting in the car with Jenny Taylor has probably been one of the most impactful things on my teaching. Just always a friendly person to bounce ideas off of and go that way. And I guess I threw my friends and family in there because I feel like they put up with a lot. So, but yeah, and I think now, oh yeah, I will say this. Please reach out. I didn't put my email or phone number there because this is being recorded, but I'm happy to put it somewhere afterwards. You can email me or text me, and happy to, if you disagree with me, would love to hear it. If anything tonight you're like, that's crap, let me hear it. I've made it pretty clear. I'm open to feedback. So, but thank you. I think this is where I pass it to Brent.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Derek. That was really fascinating. And I just love how you do everything so genuinely from the heart. That, well, clearly it pays dividends and it makes a difference. It's been really fascinating to hear your story. So I want to thank you for sharing and being so open with everyone.